Hey everyone, it's Todd, and I'm your friendly little Kentucky programmer. And I'm just down here to let you know that I put out a new build on my website for Corona, which is basically an instant way of making APIs out of the description of data. You can use it to sort of build out anywhere you need a database and an API and a web front end, actually, or any kind of front end. It's a service. And adjacent service, and you can use it for all kinds of things. So we're going to walk through that in this series and take a look at how that works, how you can use it, and different kinds of applications we can build with it. And along the way, we're going to do a little coding, woodworking, and have some C++ and C# too. Yes. All right, and yeah, we're going to do some AI. Of course we are. Who's not? Hey, Todd here. So now we're going to go have a look at our Corona website. So Corona's on countryvideogames.com, and I'm going to go ahead and type that in, countryvideogames.com. Here you are. This is a front end in React, and most of this is just bad boilerplate because honestly, my graphics design skills are not quite the best, but what we're going to do today is show you how you can actually take the smallest amount of information about how data is and have it automatically create not only a database, but also the API for it. And then finally, you can use a web host, in my case it's React, to automatically generate a fairly working user interface for it and for thus anything. So you can basically build data-driven websites instantly using AI to define a schema, if you like, and it's actually very handy, but it doesn't actually implement the data itself, so it's always correct. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this. I've gone here into my Country Video Games website, and this is our developers page, and it's very Corona friendly. Country Video Games is just me. I'm going to add some more stuff down at the bottom here for other things, like my LinkedIn and bio and all that, and make this all gradient and pretty, and I'll get an AI to do it, or Canva or something like that. Anyway, so I have samples here, and each sample is basically a little application that is described by a little file that we'll get into. To log in, we can use, we can enlist using manual methods. There's a password recovery vehicle. We can confirm codes and do that thing, and we can just do the straight login. But what we can really do is just use Google SSO and log in this way. And log in. So now here, let's take a look at our first application. We in Corona divide everything up into teams, and each team is basically a steward of its own data. They all have different permissions that they can use. And so in this case, our team is the home team, and you've got some tickets and responsibilities and notes for property. The idea of this application is sort of a catch-all. It's sort of like you can have your personal empowerment, county politics. It's extremely broad. And so that makes it a good topic for experimentations, and also to argue with political friends on Twitter. If the government shut down, we can in fact use Corona to go ahead and make one. So we're not quite there yet, but we're certainly close enough to be belligerent. So we can actually go and say, look, home team, and here's all the different data sets we have. Here's candidates. Here's more teams. In county, we have like candidate lookups and things like that. We'll get into that. Model is basically for people modeling things, and you can have tickets, and they can raise tickets to the court. We have a justice team, so where we actually model having our own court system, where we have an adversaries and derive from those are devices and plaintiffs. We can have a case, and a case can be criminal cases, liability, reparations, like in the case of, say, Black Americans want to sue the government for something that happened. Well, you basically create that. We're handling those one-off in our treatment of it. So they basically, that process of reparations can take place continuously and be consistently funded at a reasonable level so that justice can be done, but we're not trying to do everything all at once and figure out everything in broad racist strokes. So we get the people the money, the U.S. government's liable, that's reparations. Treason's like, you're basically, somebody's a traitor and they're going to have things happen to them if they're found guilty. Then we have justice tickets, and these can be like motions and different kinds of motions. I'm not a lawyer, but I did work for a paralegal. I did work for a class action law firm once in my career. So and that was in the 90s. But, hey, so, and I sleep at Holiday Inn, so we're good there. Now, and here's all the different tables that we have. And permits, again, this is sort of like we're taking a swag at basically doing environmental permitting process for a county. So the idea of the revolution is that you basically go in and say we have an instant government somewhere in a county, and you can sort of enact that government and do research. Now, for each of these data sets, there's search screens. If you click search, you get like the 500 rows back, and you can see that came back in 15 milliseconds. Corona can actually be quite fast for search. If I click on one, I can log in and I get basically my base classes that are here. So everything's a sys object, and here's its base stuff. Then I can have county information, which is derived from that. And then I have my county, which just has a FIPS code, really, actually. And I could fold those two together. This all comes from my schema design, actually. It's reading this. And I have stories and tickets I can put, and I can have candidates and demographics. So, for example, I can click here, and I can look at Calhoun County demographics. And if I want to go back up, I can click my breadcrumb, and there I am. So now I can click in here. And yeah, I know the county glitched. If you caught it, you can leave that in the YouTube comments. So now here I'm looking at education, and Calhoun County is like, well, wow. Okay, so yeah, so 50% of the people in Calhoun County have not actually gotten a high school diploma. That's something. Well, that's really something. But anyway, I shouldn't pick on Kansas, Arkansas. Well, no surprises there. You don't pay for education, you're not going to get it. You don't teach your kids to read, they're not going to learn how. And so it's not the teacher's fault, it's the parents. But anyway, I digress. So you can see that we can search things, we can do things like that and search and do models. So like in our county team again, there's an inventory topic, so that basically allows us to have individual objects. So people can have personal inventories and teams can have inventories, and this allows objects to be shipped around and assigned and moved to different people. So we're going to go in and take another look at county. We can see what we can do. We'll look for Warren this time. And this is our full text search. So we can say Warren in Kentucky and hit search, and we'll just get rid of this right now. You don't need to see that. And that came back in 12 milliseconds. Like below a certain level, you're just paying for the bandwidth. And there's Warren County, and then all the things. There's the educational stuff. And these are what's called HSRA grants. And we could look in those, and there's like all the grants, and it pulled up. So these UIs here that you see are generally actually defined either automatically or in the database schema itself. And the reason for that is that this facilitates multiple devices coming up with something. Of course, as a user agent author, you could do anything, but it's nice to know if you just need a database now and a web API now, it'll build the whole thing, and it can talk to SQL Server. So, and we can put stories on it too. So if I want to put a story on here, I could say test. You'll find out if you're a junior React developer that the secret to all UIs is just getting lots of controls. I'm no exception. This is a excellent little web markdown. This is actually a material or a non-material tabs. It's React tabs, which has some issues, but I can live with it for the moment. And then I can put in this as a story about a man named Jed. Hey, I'm in Kentucky, man, and I could shoot my farm and get some oil, but I'm going to sell it. This is a test, and, we can put some stuff in here. Bold, italics, and yeah, there it is. And see, and strike through even. I got all that. Oh, some fonts in here would be nice in this, don't you think? But what the hell. Either way, I can write a story, and there it is. And I can make it bigger, and I could even do full screen in it. And there I could write my whole story if I want to. But we'll just hit run, and that actually saves it. And then I can go back up in here. And if I go into stories, I can see there's my story, and I can go back into it, and it's preserved my text. So basically, we can add children to a record very easily. We can represent child objects easily, and we can actually create systems that are working fairly easily. All you got to do is you think about your process, you divide it up into teams, you say what are the teams for the inputs, what are the things that they're going to just work on the team within themselves, and then what are things that they're going to put out to other teams. And it's all just basically a permissions problem. And we'll get into that. This is an introductory video. So now I'm going to go back out. We looked at Revolution, we'll look at recipes. Again, I can log in. And there we are. I can do ingredients. I can make a recipe, and there's not one there, but I'll just go ahead and create a new one. This is my super quiche, and it's called super quiche. Now you can tell here that this is sort of coming in kind of automatically because my font and my layout's there, and I'll show you where we edit that later on. So there's my recipe. I'm just going to run it and save it just because I can, and I'm going to add some ingredients to my recipe, and I'm going to say cheese, and cheese I need a decent amount of cheddar, USA, damn it, that's right, and some other good cheese, and some other good cheeses, but I happen to like American cheese, so there we go, and we'll save that. So now if I go back up, I can look at my recipe, and there's my ingredients, and I got ingredients here, and I can add tasks, and I could say add the cheese to the bowl and run it. So back to my recipe. Yes, I'm going to have a button here that goes back. I was going to actually work on that. I worked on it a little bit today, but as I just added breadcrumbs up here, but it's not actually happening. But there's a save button that pops you back up the stack, so you don't have to go this way. But it's actually not too bad. And there I am. I'm just kind of easily doing that. So where did this come from? Well, we can take a look at this actually. So on my web server, I have, this is my Corona service that's running, and you can see it's putting out all these logs. And we're going to go ahead and close that up, and we're going to look at some in here and behind the scenes, and you can see we have our database server. Dave Knowlton, I am so sorry I ever forgot of you for made fun of you for saying too much. So we're here, and each inside our database, and there's a release folder. You can see here's our Revolution service executable. We have a configuration file, and the configuration file is where everything lives. And we're going to say open with Notepad just because that way. Our configuration is a database. It has a SendGrid for email accounts. It has connections. We can actually talk to SQL Server and do stuff like that. These things can all actually be overridden by environment variables, and this connection SendGrid actually is an environment variable. And likewise, I have for connections here, I could put in connection AdventureWorks 2016 and be in there. And we're going to have some examples actually where we do AdventureWorks. And then we have our list of servers, and each one is its own little application. I have an Azure thing. It doesn't quite work yet, but I'll show you the schema that I generated with help of an AI. They have the recipe thing that I showed you, the shop, and a Revolution, which is like all that stuff I showed you. So when Corona starts up, it reads this configuration file, sets up all these listen points, and it's now running all these databases and APIs all at once. So now, once we do that, we can go in and look inside each one. So for example, inside our Revolution folder, we have all these .corona files, and those are like literally a table. Essentially, each one is a kind of a table. What I call internally, it's an AX table. Don't write your own ISAM by yourself. I just needed to have a specific capability, and I did it, and it took like way too long because I didn't design it adequately, and so I went in circles too bit, but it works now, and I learned a lot by doing it. So you can see each one has its own account, has its own databases in the folder. There's templates for email, so I can go in here and say open with Notepad. If it's like, in other words, you could edit these and it would fill in. We'll take a look at one real quick. Open with Edge. Yeah, there it is. So you can see you put in the macros in there, and then it'll fill it in. So with your like username and code if you want to, and it will do that. So that's great to know, Edge. Now we have down in here also our schema. There's an onboarding one, and we're looking here for our Revolution schema. So this is the big one, and you can see we'll have all these tables. So like there's a schema name, and then here's all of our classes that go into it. If we were looking, remember we looked at county. So we can look at county. And here's our county information, which is our base, and we're saying it's full text indexing on state and county. County demographics. And you can see here like how there's a grid, row, and column on some of these. And they sort of give us that manual override capability of where things go. Again, you can always use your own UI. This is sort of a cue for people that are building UIs dynamically that you can do that. Our recommendation is that you use the generated UI unless you need not to, and inside the React project you can inject your own custom sequence in it, and all the code is in there so that you can actually, this code actually, you get that too. So now here's all the fields that we have. This data came from that. Incidentally, I used an AI to do a lot of this labeling and generating all these texts. I just highlighted my schema in Copilot. I told Copilot to go put labels on here, and it did. And I wrote the label support mechanism. So that all works. And we got the rows and columns and everything else. Inside a table, it can have indexes. And so you can see here, county, county, county. And we're going to look specifically for our county, because I know that in Corona schemas, everything has a class name. So here's county, and you can see we have a card title and field. So like if I'm up in here, we'll go back and look at Revolution real quick and just take a look at a county, and we'll track through the schema, see how this goes. So look at county team, and I'm looking at a county. There's my search, and there's all my cards. These are the cards. You can see Chilton County, State, Alabama, Phipps. So, whoops, sorry about that. We can go into our page again, and you can see here's our Phipps state and county. And if I have Phipps, should actually be Phipps code. That's why it's not showing up. So we'll fix that later on, and then we can run it again. But we're not doing that just yet. So you could do Phipps. You basically, yeah, the idea is that you just edit these schemas and you keep launching Corona until it works. And you're just describing your data, and you're not actually telling it how to work with it. Corona is declarative. It understands a relational object model plus a little bit of relational calculus, and that it can use actually derive classes to create an equivalent of sort of like a from clause that is a list of tables in an array, essentially, and then it can join those together or union them as it sees fit. So now we can actually get to the next thing. As you can see, all these fields that appear are basically Phipps, state code, county, demographics. And you can see here we have demographics, education, and these are query fields. Objects in Corona can have queries. So basically each class defines the object. It's got a name, it's got a base class, it's got a color I can put on it, it's got fields I can say full text indexing, and you have an author and a version, which Corona uses to make sure that you're not overwriting class versions if you want to. Only the current version of a class is kept, but at least you can keep your schema straight and know what's being deployed where. So fields can basically be simply stated either like key value pair, where the value is just the type, and you can also have complex type specifications where you can open it up with braces, and the key is that, and then the object is a type, a complex version. In this case, we have a query type, and the query type, it basically shows us that right in here is what I'm looking at, demographics. It's a query. It comes from county demographics, and it filters on my current object stat, and then it rolls through the stages, and it goes through and pulls them out. And likewise with education. And you can see here our user agent, we'll just go look at Calhoun County, has in fact demographics, education, and the UI's basically said, give us this project, and it did all this for us, and it's handling all the navigation, pulling all the fetches, and Corona behind the scenes is not even doing that much, because if we look inside our network stack, you can see we've already done it. But we'll go back in it and we'll look at a candidate. So like we want to say look something up, we'll look up a donor, and we'll say let's go look for a donor named Smith. Alright, and of course we just got back some subset of Smith, but Joni Smith, Joanne Smith, zip code, gave $100 to who? Friends of Bernie Sanders. Alright, and we can go in and look in that, and then there's other candidates that gave to it, and then there's the Bernie Sanders committee. And I'm looking at Friends of Bernie Sanders, and Ellen Peterson also gave to the Friends of Bernie Sanders. So we can kind of walk around in that. So anyway, you can see that that's how that works. Basically, you can very easily state, and we'll just go back into this, is instead of having to write all these joins yourself, you just put this into your schema file, and Corona does everything. So likewise, we want to have fields where we are not just even queries, but actually our own data. So we can say, up at the top, if we take a notice, the base class for county information is Here's our base class, and here we have actually a county and a state, and then we also have, we can put stories on things. But why can't we put stories on it? Because a work object has it. So in Corona there's inheritance, and because you can see that everything is inherited from, like a lot of things are happening, inheriting from work objects. Once you find it, I can have stories on it. That might be a native type, actually. Oh, no, it's not. It's right here. So there's our base work object, stories, and tickets. And because we have our candidate derived from that, we picked up our stories and tickets. And if I want to add a story, of course I can. And I will solve test story, copyright 2028, Todd. And I could put a LinkedIn reference to it, test of stuff, Todd, and my authors. And you know, the tab key is actually something you can control here. This is a test story about R2D2 and his force using leaders. And we'll run that, and we'll go back up and look at Friends of Bernie Sanders, and there's some stories. So we could build a catalog and a diary about all these things, and we can search through all these stories. So if you're doing advocacy work, this kind of capability is quite useful. And we'll have specific examples for advocacy as we move forward. Anyway, we could take another look at even a simpler case. That's Revolution, which has got everything. And it's honestly hard to comprehend. It's big because I have it covering, its coverage of Revolution actually works over all of the Corona test cases. And so there's a lot of things in there that we test with. Not everyone is going to need everything beyond that. So we can take a look at our recipe schema, which is much simpler. And there's our recipe. Oh, I don't know why it's loading this up. Oh, it's probably because of something. But anyway, ooh, that's pretty. Jeez, that looks really nice. Oh, I know why. Okay, well, I have a license for it. I just didn't put it in there yet, and you don't need to see it. So there's a recipe, and here again I have a class ingredient. It derives from sysobject. Task to perform a recipe, and then I have a comment, and its parents are ticket and story, which is not quite correct, but I can live with it. And then there's a recipe here. We'll fix it, in other words. There's a recipe, and it has ingredients, tasks, and stories. And so, in other words, to build a relationship to ingredients, I'm literally just saying I have an ingredient, and I use this array-like syntax. And on the ingredient itself, I make sure that I have a parent that is my other thing. And that basically does all my joins for data within Corona in the simplest way possible. There's other ways to do it, but that is by far the easiest. It's like literally instant rich data. So that's kind of the capabilities. The idea is you edit the file and you run this thing, and then you can do it. So we can now go ahead and take a look at, we'll just go ahead and go back to the developers page. You can download, you can have a look at our code here in our repo, which has all of our things. This master branch is the main branch because I'm a stoozer. But here's the Corona server, which is the C++ application. This is sort of shared code in C++ that's used by Corona servers. Documents, there's some documentation about it. Revolution Win32 is a client service that's experimental, and you'll use it for games for the Windows Store. Documents and images, and that's that. So that's actually where you can go get the database server. But if you want to download a working example, I've got a bonus here for y'all. This Corona releases folder actually contains both the database and a copy of the CountryBit website with this in it, so you can follow through and use it locally on your own stuff. So I'm just downloading this file, and we'll go open it and take a look. You can look inside of here in releases, and you can go in here, and if you have your React, you could just do you could fit and decompress this, git install, and npm run install, and that'll basically set you up, because this is a React project. Why I thought Krakow, I don't know, but I don't even really use it, and I just got to clean it up. And sometimes React is just horrible. But anyway, if you go to source here, a key thing to look at is in Corona there's a folder called app settings. App settings actually tells you sort of where where Corona services live on the website. So basically, here's the client. How do you find a corresponding service? Why this is taking so long? Oh, I know why, because I'm pulling it out of a compressed folder. But either way, so that's that one. But the other one you want, really, if you want to have it and play with your own Coronas and do it, you want to go in here and in Country Video Games Home in public. I'm sorry, not in public. Definitely, that's got all kinds of shit in it. There's in the Corona folder, there is all, I'm sorry, not Corona. It's in just straight up source about. But where is it? Oh. Okay, well, you don't really have all. Well, actually, yeah, you can just get latest and pull it down. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you'll be all right. So yeah, the zip is missing a file. You'll definitely want to get latest in that because the repo will come with you. Okay, so you'll download that and it'll pull the repo. Anyway, so you get the UI in there, and if you go into this developer about page right in here, I'll show you. What you're looking for is this page and where these links are and where that all comes from. So in Visual Studio, that looks like this. Revolution, here's where it is, what it does, and I'm going to have it so that it'll download the schema and let you look at it. And eventually, we could actually let you do it online, but actually, there's way better ways to do that kind of thing. Still, I can click in here, Revolution, Services. So all I got to do is I create a data file that's a schema. It describes all of my data. I put it in a list. I just edit the website to actually include it, and I can even pull that out of the service. I have an API for it. I just haven't used it yet. And it can build all the applications I want for any kind of data-rich environment and do things. And that's Corona in a nutshell. In our next discussion, we'll talk more details about it and how you can work with it, how you can use it. We'll have more examples and go through it, but that's kind of it for right now. The idea again is we can just basically, you don't need to write a whole full service stack. You don't need all that boilerplate code. Corona just does it. You can have an AI tell it to do it, even if you're lazier than that, and we'll walk you through that. Okay? Thanks for listening.